Spider-Man is without a doubt the most popular and monetarily successful superhero that Marvel has ever created. Sporting the broadest and best-known rogues gallery of any superhero, Spider-Man has appeared in dozens of adaptations, from both live-action and animated TV shows to a Japanese show, and 5, soon to be 6, movies. As a result, there has been more than a few hiccups along the way that have left fans mad. So here are our top 10 controversial Spider-Man moments. Let us know what your favorites are from this list, and remember to push that red button to subscribe for more. Spider-Man 3's dance scene. The third movie in the Raimi trilogy received initially a mixed critical reaction, but is now generally perceived to be, well, pretty terrible. Its villains lacked focus, it was overly cluttered, and those complaints describe all the Spider-Man movies since then. However, it was the dance scene that really tipped the stupid over the edge. The worst part of the ridiculous ballroom dance scene isn't just how out of place it is and how unlike the rest of the movie it is, it's the fact that it was well choreographed. A lot of time and effort went into making this dance scene. Tobey Maguire underwent dance training and hours of rehearsal in order to get it perfect. On the behind-the-scenes DVD special features, the choreographer praises Maguire's great skill. This is all time that could have gone to fixing the numerous problems of Spider-Man 3's script, rather than shoehorning a decently well-crafted dance scene into the movie. The death of Gwen Stacy. While today it's considered to be one of the most iconic moments of comic history and a defining story of the Bronze Age of comics, at the time the death of Gwen Stacy was hugely controversial. The idea of killing off Spidey's main love interest, this was before Mary Jane firmly placed herself in that role, was unthinkable. Marvel needed a bump in sales though, and they thought the best way to do that was to bump off Gwen Stacy. Not only that, but it was Spider-Man's failure that caused her death, as he accidentally snaps her neck when trying to save her. With comics just coming out of the Silver Age and Spider-Man never having been a particularly dark comic, fans just didn't know how to take all this sudden weight at once. Now that time has passed, however, fans appreciate this story and the bold steps it took to bring comic books into the modern age. Gwen Stacy was a huge part of Pete's life. Her death became a huge part of Spider-Man's lore, and the question of their relationship, had she survived, will always be his greatest what if. Kraven's death and spirit. Kraven's last hunt is kind of a big deal. In fact, Comic Book Resources fans voted it as the greatest Spider-Man story ever told. At the dawn of the Dark Age of comics, J.M. DeMatteis penned what was to be the final Kraven story, taking a villain who had been relatively lackluster, and having him not only defeat Spider-Man, but end his own life in the darkest Spider-Man story ever told to that point. So, if everyone loved it, where's the controversy? Well, the story, originally planned as a Batman story, features Kraven shooting himself with a shotgun. This sparked outrage over its supposed glorification of suicide, and as a result, it caused DeMatteis to write a sequel story, Soul of the Hunter, a story which completely undermined the poignant and dark subject matter of the first story. Bottom line, J.M. DeMatteis couldn't win either way. The Lizard's portrayal in The Amazing Spider-Man. Not unlike Spider-Man 3, public opinion of the Amazing Spider-Man movies turned pretty quickly, but everyone was in agreement from the start that the first movie's villain, the Lizard, was handled very poorly. While the Lizard has been portrayed as both an animalistic split personality that Dr. Connors has no control over, and as Connors being evil and pretending to have a split personality, the movie just wasn't able to decide which interpretation it wanted to use. That, and the decision to use a complicated villain in a movie that doesn't dedicate very much time to him, and the decision to give him a human-like face, like in his early appearances, instead of the Lizard face we know and love, meant a lot of die-hard Lizard fans just weren't happy. The death of Peter Parker, Ultimate Spider-Man. For some, Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man is the definitive take on the character. It depicts high school-age Peter Parker at his most realistic and succeeds in being a funny, action-filled comic that subverts our expectations of the character and his villains. The ultimate of these subversions being killing Peter Parker. After around 200 issues, Brian Michael Bendis did the unthinkable and in typical Bendis fashion sparked outrage amongst fans who loved this version of Peter. While the original 616 universe had many characters come back from the dead, in Ultimate Spider-Man, generally the dead stayed buried, and it did not seem like Peter would be coming back anytime soon. Fans just didn't want Ultimate Spider-Man without Peter, and the news that they would be replacing him with a new full-time Spider-Man only sparked further controversy. Speaking of which, the introduction of Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. When it was announced that the half-black, half-Latino Miles Morales was going to be replacing Peter Parker as Spider-Man full-time, this added more fuel to the ever-growing flame war between Spider-Man fans. Miles Morales being biracial sparked just as much controversy as Miles replacing Peter Parker. Some more conservative fans were unhappy with the introduction of a biracial Spider-Man, seeing it as just an attempt to be politically correct by changing a pre-existing superhero identity. On the other side of the argument were those who complained that it was Marvel attempting to shove two minorities into one character thanks to Miles' mixed heritage, with some angry that it wasn't an Asian superhero, and that there were a lot of black characters in comics already. Needless to say, for those who just wanted to see what was going to be done with the character, it was a headache. Thankfully, while always in Peter's shadow, simply by virtue of being another Spider-Man, Miles has managed to stand on his own 2 feet and serve as an interesting character in his own right. He has a very different personality from Peter, and he even has different spider-themed powers that Peter didn't have. Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn's affair. Even more controversial than the death of Gwen Stacy was what many fans viewed as her character assassination during the storyline Sins Past. The story, written by J. Michael Straczynski, introduced Gabriel and Sarah Stacy, the twin children of Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy. It's revealed by Mary Jane that Gwen Stacy had an affair with Norman, and not only were these children the result, but also part of the reason that the Goblin killed her. Fans hated this story because not only did it make Gwen Stacy look bad, it also made Mary Jane look pretty awful, and its explanation for the children's advanced aging and speedy pregnancy was just so unconvincing that nobody liked it.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
It was down to bad decisions in editorial that caused this to happen too, as was the case with the majority of the hated parts of Straczynski's run. And it's not the only time his particular run will be on this list. Peter being a clone, the Clone Saga. The Clone Saga was a very long part of Spider-Man's history. The story ran for years with no writer really being sure how to finish it or even how to make sense of it. With the Clone Saga needing a big twist, it was decided that Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, should be revealed as the actual Spider-Man, and that the Peter Parker that we've been following since the initial predecessor to the Clone Saga was actually a clone with the memories of Ben. It came as a shock to both Peter and the readers, who couldn't stand the twist and the thought that they had been wasting their time with a character they didn't even really know all this time. While the decision was soon retconned and it was revealed that Peter was in fact Peter, there was a point in time in which the direction of Spider-Man during its most convoluted arc looked very uncertain indeed. Erasing his marriage in one more day. We mentioned earlier that J. Michael Straczynski's run was plagued with editorial interference. One More Day was the worst example of this, with the hugest consequences for the character. With Joe Quesada writing more or less the entire final storyline, Peter Parker makes a deal with Mephisto to erase his marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. This meant not only erasing all of the happy years the couple had spent together, but it also meant separating Aunt May from her boyfriend, and it also lacked any real consequence for anyone but the reader, because the characters aren't even aware that they were married. Fans hated it for the huge change, and also for how pointless it seems. Needless to say, it's now probably the most hated and controversial Spider-Man storyline of all time. Spider-Man unmasks himself with Civil War. Most MCU fans will know that Spider-Man got thrown into Captain America's Civil War at the last minute due to Marvel only being lent the rights very late into production. This, coupled with it being the audience's first interaction with MCU Spider-Man, meant that it wouldn't make sense for this movie to copy the controversial arc that Spider-Man undertakes in the comic book storyline. While casual fans love the idea of Civil War, the comic itself is generally disliked by hardcore comic fans for Marvel superheroes acting wildly out of character for the sake of the plot. One of the biggest examples of this was the decision to have Spider-Man take off his mask and reveal his identity to the public as Peter Parker. This was a huge change to the status quo, which a lot of fans outright rejected. Peter Parker's dual life was a huge part of what made him unique from other Marvel heroes, whose identities are usually either known to the public or flat out lack a secret identity. Taking this away from the character could certainly be used for great writing, but it still garnered a lot of hate from the fans. On the upside, we got to see Peter in the Iron Spider costume. That was pretty cool. Well, that's our list. Are there any Spider-Man moments that you didn't like? Why not let us know in the comments below? And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and check out the rest of our channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to CBR for cool videos about movies, action heroes, gaming, comics, and more.